I don't think. Oh, cool. We are. Dope. All right. Well, we'll get that out.
Oh boy.
All right. Yeah. Have to relog in on it now. Apparently we only can do YouTube streaming through schedule ahead, because if we do it any other way, it's gonna throw fits.
Really?
Yeah, and we got there.
That's different than when we're used to. That's different. Damn, I don't remember that.
A chat? We don't have a chat. That's fun.
But I also don't remember how we did it before. Years ago. But I remember. I don't remember it being this hard.
The thing is, they've just been making it things. It's like it's super easy if you schedule ahead of time, but if it's not scheduled, then it just becomes an issue.
Yeah, so like they've done something since then.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm surprised by that, to be frank with you, but because I'm not. But you know.
Alright, real quick. Words. Don't mind how meta this is getting. And it's also going live as a podcast.
And what?
Yeah, so they now have the one thing license is if you make a playlist, you can make a playlist, mark it as a podcast, so then it will also distribute it as a podcast to the Google podcast services.
Ah, all right, done.
Yeah, that's handy. And where did I put that chat window? Okay, here, and then make sure OBS is not dying. Looks fine.
Ideally.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, we're good. I need to get a good tiling manager for my Linux setup. Alright. So welcome to Free Beer Society, a podcast that needs to have intro music put together still. But at least we have something vaguely resembling a schedule and thumbnails.
We have our voices.
We do. I'm TK. I'm joined by Seb, or Brooke.
Hi. You did that in my name.
That's fine.
Thanks, Tim.
Yes. I mean, it's like
your name is always around.
Yeah, I mean, I gave you like the most like vague nickname too, so I think it's fine.
Yeah, that's right.
At some point, you'll have to start going by Sev, like Remote Commando.
You know, I always think of that. I think of that out of from Republic Commando. I think of like a spy soldier's book I read as a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love those books when I was a kid. Anyway. All right. China accuses U.S. of violating trade truce. Vows forceful measures.
So this is from Rebecca Falconer at Axios. Of course, it's something we've been following for a while. The ever rising cost of the current administration, and they're just wanting this to piss off our biggest trade partners. And of course, this is even affecting countries outside of our own. I don't know if you've noticed any sort of increased prices up north, or how you're feeling outside of just shame and despair.
Well, I know it has pushed Canada a massive movement of just buying local,
Yeah.
especially against American stuff. Like everything in like the grocery store now has a sign saying if it's from America,
Yeah. I'd
and
imagine.
nobody will touch it.
I'd imagine. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I've seen ads of like Tim Hortons, like showing like all Canadian donuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. China accuses U.S. of violating trade truce, vows forceful measures. China accused the U.S. Violating the trade deal that the world's two largest economies signed last month and vowed to take resolute and forceful measures per a briefing on Monday morning local time. Why it matters. It's the latest sign of deteriorating relations between the two nations since their Switzerland meeting last month led to a deal to lower tariffs on each other for 90 days while they negotiated on trade. President Trump accused Beijing on Friday of violating the agreement one day after Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent described negotiations as a bit stalled. Driving the news, a Chinese Commerce Ministry spokesperson said Beijing firmly rejects these unjustified accusations per translations of the comments that are carried by the state media. The spokesperson alleged that the U.S. had seriously undermined and violated the trade agreement by issuing export control guidelines for AI chips, stopping the sale of chip design software (EDA) to China, and announcing the revocation of visas for Chinese students. If the U.S. insists on its own way and continues to damage Chinese interests, China will continue to take resolute and forceful measures to safeguard its legitimate rights and interests, the spokesperson added without elaborating further. The other side, at the direction of President Trump, the administration is aggressively moving to onshore critical supply chains, including the production of magnets in the United States. The White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt said in response to Axios' request for comment on Beijing's remarks. At the same time, the administration is actively monitoring China's compliance with the Geneva Trade Agreement, and President Trump will speak directly with President Xi Jinping very soon. While Trump didn't go into details on his claims that Beijing had totally violated the trade deal, administration officials have pointed to delays in sending critical minerals to the United States, which are needed for American auto, electronics, and defense industries that formed part of the agreement. What China is doing is they are holding back products that are essential for the industrial supply chains of India, of Europe, and that is not what a reliable partner does, Bessent said during a Sunday interview on CBS News, Face the Nation. We're watching, Bessent said on CBS, he's confident the two-sided issues will be ironed out once Trump and Xi have spoken. The fact that the two are withholding some of the products that they agreed to release during the agreement, maybe it's a glitch in the Chinese system, maybe it's intentional, he told CBS Margaret Brennan. We'll see after what Bessent speaks to Xi. So, this is an interesting one because this is a time where I also believe that both sides are going to be kind of at fault because it is true that we agreed with China to maintain a certain level of trade, and in that trade were certain rare earth materials that were used for sort of American heavy industry, so our auto, electronics, and bombs. The three things that even our autos don't get made in America, we then reship that down to Mexico to actually manufacture auto parts, and then the auto parts get assembled in the United States. So this one's kind of a funny one, but we still do manufacture some electronics, and mostly just bombs, and the main thing we make in America is bombs and drones, so this is actually like a thing. But at the same time, we essentially have started forcibly um, uh, deporting Chinese students, even if they have student visas. And we've also not been sending them those electronic chips once manufactured that they've been using for AI development and heavy computing. So this is, with AI being kind of the hot button topic, and it seems like that's the modern arms race. That feels like that is a very intentional stop order for our exports back to China, which then also feels a lot more impactful than just the raw materials, and that feels up. Then that I can see definitely sparking China performing some sort of retaliation for our part in the breach.
Just what type of retaliation are we going to see? What type?
I imagine the materials that are already slowed down might come to a complete halt, or they might, because now they have their own trade base with the new Chinese trade sphere, includes Japan and Korea. I imagine that then, which those are also allied nations for us, but if them, they might now also be tied into hampering our ability to trade with them. So we may see also trade pressure put on us from China, from Japan and Korea, in addition to China.
That's going great.
Yes, it is.
That's going swimmingly. So good.
Yes. Yeah.
Eventually there'll be a calm. There'll be the waters will settle at a new place eventually.
Maybe.
It has to at some point.
Yeah.
But we're not close to that right now, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm just curious what type of retaliation then, how impactful will it be for the US specifically?
Right. I mean,
Just like, go ahead, say.
I was saying it can also, and like this is my conspiracy brain, is that they might also, because Xi is also on, he's on pretty stable ground domestically. Like, he's actually pretty popular in China, but internationally he's needs more international support. So they could also be both of them jockeying for sort of more of that like wildcard status, because Trump loves being at a point where he's more feared than trusted, which is why he's constantly trying to screw everyone over, and then it turns into a nothing burger because he'll pull back before there's any real consequences.
In other words, he will be a taco man.
Yeah, I mean, this is the start of this administration has been interesting because, like, as opposed to the last 4 years, this is definitely like the most damage he's done to the United States as well as the international community, like from the rip.
Absolutely.
Because last administration he did like a decent amount of damage, but he, for a lot of times where like things would be catastrophic, he'd pull back at last second and fall back on, oh, I was just trying to do brinksmanship, which is mostly just him trying to make himself feel more powerful and scare other people around him, or him just being a dumbass and his advisors having to pull him back in. I think this might also be Xi trying to prove a point to the Taco Man and say, like, well, you're not the only one who can play that game, and my economy bigger than yours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But seriously, if they fully will hold certain things, the U.S. could be crippled in some way.
Yeah, because like we like I said, we don't do any raw, like, we do very little raw production, like raw material production in the United States, like mostly lumber and like minute amounts, not even enough to like make up our own consumption base. So like everything we make, we create in some way is imported, whether that's raw materials that we re-export to where our factories are located, because sometimes that is cheaper. Like the auto trade, it's cheaper to import from China and then export to Mexico and then import the parts from Mexico.
Yeah.
But like, if we don't receive those rare earth materials, then our like the American defense industry will become crippled. We still have like such a surplus of just like we have so much unexploded ordnance because that is essentially how those companies make money. Is they just make bombs that'll never get used. So we have warehouses and warehouses of ordnance and drones and shit that will never see the light of day. But it's just this cycle of we need to spend money, keep our economy from crashing, and we do that by producing bombs, and then we can't actually use those bombs anymore. So the defense contractors love it because they can turn a profit, so they keep on upping the bids.
But it doesn't really discern strategy.
No, like we've been due for economic collapse for a while. So honestly, this is probably just Trump accelerating the inevitable by.
Well, he does like to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know that. Yeah. All right. I want to learn honestly. Not I don't think I want to go to China anytime soon, but I want to study the culture and understand it better.
Yeah, I'd love to go to China actually. A couple different places, but yeah, I mean China just recently this year for the first time is now reducing emissions. Like they've actually, yeah, and it's been a progress that they've been working on. Like it's been an ongoing project. It's not that they've been intentionally ignoring it. It's been an ongoing project. It's now that finally their emission reduction matches their level of industry, and it's looking like that's only going to accelerate to a point where they might be a carbon efficient country.
Nice.
Yeah. So
positive.
That'd be that'd be cool to see like all the green tech they're working on there. A lot of their infrastructure, I want to see how. We sound super artistic, but I love the trains. So, there's one city where trains will run through apartments, but the apartments are built to be mostly soundproof. And
I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So yeah, cool.
All right, what is this one?
Next story. From Wyan Whitham at Ars Technica, if Google settles the shareholder lawsuit, will spend $500 million on being less evil.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
That's how it should be told to be, less evil.
You're right.
That's... Doesn't feel like sometimes to take a nice week in the news.
Yeah.
Or life. Surely that feels like out of a comic book.
For sure. I feel like it definitely feels like right now we're in the world of Lex Luthors and Baron Struckers. I don't know if there's anyone in a position of power that I legitimately feel like is a decent person.
Yeah, just Luthor was smarter than Trump though.
Yeah. But I mean, so this is an interesting one because obviously we're on YouTube, which is a Google platform, but I can't tell if it's less evil than Twitch and Amazon or not, but it's more convenient, that's for sure. But with Google continuing to be evil and more wanting to turn consumers into their product, selling their consumer data without actually getting consumer authorization or feeling like we're cattle has been a lot of what's driven me to drop Chrome and continue to move more and more towards a completely free and open source setup and try to have decent OPSEC, so using plugins that will actively negate what Google tries to do on my browser. But yeah, how have you been feeling with Google wanting to turn you into a product to be sold to marketing agencies?
Don't love it. It doesn't bother me as much as it done others. For whatever reason, I can't really explain why,
Yeah.
I'm weird. If they want my weird data, that's on them. I feel inspired for them.
Yeah. I mean, whatever FBI agent is reviewing my porn history, they're scarred, I'm sure.
Family asked to live for the lead of the show. So they will likely hear you say that at some point now.
I mean, that's fine. Well, it's I'm an open book.
No, very bother.
Yeah.
I think most people, we all have something, some FBI agents will be going through and have their eyes kind of bulge for a moment and then become again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
It's just on one side, there's really not much for me to see in my mind. So that, okay, that's not great. But we've talked about this before. At the end of the day, laws have to be updated for the modern world.
Yeah.
And you see like many new technologies and aspects of culture as decades go on, I think. And this is just a part of it. I think laws for the internet and for companies are not up to date. Partly. Yeah. I think a lot of people don't even understand it that well either.
Right.
So this is a silly message a little bit, be less evil. But they would not happen if things like this either were held a little more accountable.
Yeah, I mean we're at a point where we're at kind of another like gilded age for tech barons now, and we're kind of seeing the start of antitrust legislation or antitrust movements being passed back and forth. But it's not. We don't have a driving force as strong as Teddy Roosevelt was for breaking up trust. So, well, hopefully, the next administration is kind of that strong driving power. But we'll have to see.
I don't really know law, so I guess maybe we could argue they were held accountable because there's a lawsuit, they had to put money out, etc., right?
Yeah.
But not enough of a punishment. Because that's kind of especially with a company like this,
right?
That's a little tap on the wrist, and
this is a drop in the bucket for them. Yeah.
They won't care.
Yeah.
It's nothing. It means nothing.
Yeah, like honestly, I think we need to get to the point where they are forced to divest different departments or subholdings have to become separate companies again. Like with the first round of antitrust legislation, where you had oil companies get broken up and had become smaller oil companies again, which they have now remonopolized because we can't actually, we're very inefficient when it comes to combating greed.
Yeah, so yeah. That's it right there.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into it. It has become a common refrain during Google's antitrust saga. What happened to Don't Be Evil? Google's unofficial model has haunted it as it has grown ever larger, but a shareholder lawsuit sought to rein in some of the company's excesses, and it might be working. The plaintiffs in the case have reached a settlement with Google parent company Alphabet, which will spend a boatload of cash on comprehensive reforms. The goal is to steer Google away from the kind of anti-competitive practices that got it in hot water. Under the terms of the settlement obtained by Bloomberg Law, Alphabet will spend $500 million over the next 10 years on systemic reforms. The company will have to form a board-level committee devoted to overseeing the company's regulatory compliance and antitrust risk, a rarity for U.S. firms. The group will report directly to CEO Sundar Pichai. There will also be reforms at other levels of the company that will allow employees to identify potential legal pitfalls before they affect the company. Google has also agreed to preserve communications. Google's propensity to use auto-deleting chats drew condemnation from several judges overseeing its antitrust cases. The agreement still needs approval from the U.S. District Judge Rita Lynn in San Francisco, but that's mainly a formality at this point. Naturally, Alphabet does not admit to any wrongdoing under the terms of the settlement, but it may have to pay tens of millions in legal fees on top of the promised $500 million investment. Over the next years, we have devoted substantial resources to building robust compliance processes, a Google spokesperson said. To avoid protracted litigation, we're happy to make these commitments. This case is what's known as a consolidated derivative litigation. I need to get my prescription updated, where multiple shareholder lawsuits are combined into a single action. The litigation stretches back to 2021 when a Michigan pension fund accused Google of harming the company's future by triggering widespread antitrust and regulatory actions with prolonged and ongoing monopolistic and anti-competitive business practices. The accusation has only gained more weight in the years since it was made. Today, Google's coming off 3 major antitrust losses. In 2023, Google lost an antitrust case brought by Epic Games that accused it of anti-competitive practices in app distribution. In 2024, the Department of Justice successfully showed that Google has illegally maintained a search monopoly. Finally, Google lost the advertising antitrust case earlier this year, putting its primary revenue driver at risk. These legal salvos could cost the company billions in fines and force major changes to its businesses. Google is facing a world in which it might need to open Google Play to other app stores, hand over advertising data to competitors, license its search index, and even sell the Chrome browser. Perhaps the reforms will lead to a changed company, but that won't undo the damage from the current spate of antitrust actions. So, kind of all this to me, it seems like it's not necessarily done out of a altruistic purpose. It seems like it's done out of a, I mean, it's a lawsuit brought on by its shareholders, so it's like, these are all kind of they're not wanting them to make this change to actually be a better, more ethical company. They're doing it to make sure that the Google is at a lesser risk of getting sued again, or by being cut down by antitrust laws, so they can preserve their money that they have invested. Whereas I personally think that getting cut down by antitrust laws would be where we need to go in terms of ethics.
I don't disagree with that, Tim. I think.
Yeah. So, what are some of your initial thoughts on all of this? They have lost 3 legal battles that could cost them a couple billions. That is actually could be a little more substantial, even though they are still a multi-billion-dollar company, so they can afford that. But being forced to maybe divest some of their businesses, and giving up their monopoly on search, even though search is already kind of dead, thanks to AI making it impossible to look up anything.
I like your ideas, like I don't have crazy thoughts here because this is one problem I see within a story like this a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
I could be very wrong on this. Well, I'm trying to think how I say this. So this is useful information, I think, if it helps make more constructive laws and actually change things, right?
Yeah.
But you cannot make more constructive laws if you do not want to make the laws in the first place.
Right.
And again, this is just, like you said, shareholders protecting their own company in a weird way.
Yeah.
And that's not an answer either, really, necessarily. So it's good information, but the Senate committee says nothing's going to come out of this, really.
Right. And that's also a fear I have, is that it could turn into also something of a nothing burger, or that Google finds some way to squirm out of it, and that we find out 5 years down the road that they've actually have not been abiding. They've been abiding by the letter of the ruling, but not by the spirit of it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Because this is not the first time that they have faced scrutiny for their search monopoly. So
that's the other thing. Like, it keeps on happening, right?
Yeah.
And okay, you leave your child and it go to cookie jar, right?
Mm-hmm.
You come back and say, no, bad little child. And they get out of the cookie jar. Then you leave the room. 5 minutes later, they're back in a down jar.
Yeah.
So
I think it's I think it's really funny that you brought that up because I think that's the same exact analogy that Teddy Roosevelt used for why he was so hard on antitrust laws.
that's funny. But it's a good analogy. It's accurate.
I feel like it's very apt for.
Yeah.
So this next story is gonna be a little bit of a mixed bag, because it covers a couple different things. Like unfortunately, piracy on the internet is it's illegal. You're stealing some people's work and production. However, many artists are okay with it because they can actually get a better press or publicity or even sometimes monetary gain from piracy than you can do from label deals. That was a System of a Down's whole thing. A couple of our hip hop artists have done similar stuff where they've actually done campaigns to pirate their music as opposed to buy it. But also, there's so much tied in with how much piracy is also tied in with cyber activism and maintaining free flow of information for use of the web, combating government overreach and censorship. So it's always been a mixed bag, and I imagine it's going to be a while before there's any sort of investment in this at all, especially because we're already dealing with so many issues of corporate greed and overreach that almost demand piracy as, especially when it comes to operating systems, as a form of.
Well, I love to think of it for movies or TV, and I have something to say on that, in all honesty. But you go ahead, and then I'm going to talk about it a little bit from the generalist side of piracy and use movies and TV's analogy, because I have the most experience with that, trying to find stuff. But go ahead, you go first.
I mean, even before getting into it, I think also piracy can play a very important part when it comes to media preservation, because there's so much stuff now that is no longer available when there's no longer it's no longer being maintained by the rights holders willingly. So now you have to find some way to get that. I mean, DOSBox is great for trying to preserve all those old DOS games that are no longer being serviced by the original creators, or that have their rights lost in limbo and can no longer be resold by anyone.
If you want to see a game, right? I'm not going to name a game. I'm going to name a show for a moment before you go into it, really, and then I say more. Game. I love the Transformers Cybertron games so much. Can't get them anywhere. Yeah. At all. Only way to get them on a PC now, I think, really, is to pirate it. Yeah. Microsoft will sell it. Nobody will sell it. And maybe go to Game Pass at some point. There's a rumor for that, but that. Another good one is for TV. Do you remember Fillmore? Yes. Yeah. That was a really creative, child's top show. I just have a lot of respect for that show. Anyway, I think that Disney Plus in one country, some random ass country in the world, right? Yeah. And it's not available anywhere else. And you can't buy it. You can't rent it. You can't. It's just gone. I don't think it even had a disc release. Yeah. So you can't go to buy a physical copy like Amazon. Exactly. I mean, that was the same thing with Voltron on Netflix, the new series. I think this is the last season. They never made a DVD of it, and then Netflix took it off the service. So now that last season no longer exists. It's all the lost episodes. Yep. So only way I can watch Fillmore is if I go to YouTube. Someone actually put up the whole series. Nice. And I think Disney doesn't care about it enough or forgot about it so much. Yeah. That they're just not fighting it. Yeah, I mean, also some of that stuff, it's at a point where it's in rights limbo, where the original rights holder has, did not renew the rights to it, so now they can no longer take legal action to reclaim that, but also no one else can essentially buy it to redistribute it, so. Yeah. So that's also be why it's not really out on any official channels? Could be, yeah. All right, go ahead. I have more to say, but go ahead.
It's from John Brodkin at Ars Technica. ISP settles with record labels that demand mass termination of internet users. Internet service provider Frontier Communications agreed to settle a lawsuit filed by major record labels that demanded mass disconnections of broadband users accused of piracy. Universal, Sony, and Warner sued Frontier in 2021 in a notice of settlement filed last week in U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York. The parties agreed to dismiss the case with prejudice, which, if anyone means what that means, is that with prejudice means that it cannot be tried again. With each side to pay its own fees and costs. The record label and Frontier simultaneously announced a settlement of similar claims in a bankruptcy court case in the same district. Frontier also settled with movie companies in April of this year, just before the trial was scheduled to begin. Frontier exited bankruptcy in 2021. Since settlement terms weren't announced, it's not clear whether Frontier is changing its practices to satisfy the copyright holders' demands for mass terminations of broadband subscribers. We contacted Frontier and will update this article if we get a response. Supreme Court may rule on ISP's obligations. Regardless of what is in the agreement, the question of whether ISPs should have to crack down more harshly on users accused of piracy could be decided by the U.S. Supreme Court. The High Court is considering whether to view a Sony victory over the cable company Cox. The Trump administration weighed in on Cox's side, arguing that ISPs should not be held liable for contributory copyright infringement or failing to terminate subscribers after receiving notice of infringement. And this is a weird one, because this, for me, is a moment of like a broken clock is right twice a day. The Trump admin's Department of Justice said that making ISPs liable for their customers' infringement could encourage providers to avoid substantial monetary liability by terminating subscribers after receiving a single notice of alleged infringement. The record label's lawsuit complained that Frontier received hundreds of thousands of copyright infringement notices from copyright owners, but provided known repeat infringers with continued access to and use of its network, and failed to terminate accounts of otherwise take meaningful action against subscribers. ISPs have argued that infringement notices sent on behalf of record labels and movie companies are unreliable, and that they shouldn't have to terminate customers based on unproven allegations. ISPs have frequently pointed out that terminating customer accounts would hurt people using the same account as someone accused of privacy. ISPs terminate users who appear to be the most prolific offenders, but they don't disconnect enough powers to satisfy the demands of litigious copyright holders when record labels sued Frontier in 2021. The ISP told ours that Frontier is not alleged to have done anything directly to infringe copyright owners' rights, and in fact has terminated many customers about whom copyright owners have complained. Frontier believes that it's done nothing wrong and will vigorously defend itself.
So are they saying that if you're using a pirate site, you'll be terminated, or if you make a pirate site?
I believe it's if you make a pirate site or upload pirated content. Okay. Yeah, my own issue with that then is if someone unwittingly downloads a virus, which often happens, it may not be a malicious virus, but it could be a seeding virus, because that's how some pirate sites work, is they'll use peer-to-peer downloads using things like a torrent, which are done using multiple different seeds, multiple different users who are essentially re-uploading that same data, and some person may not be aware that they are seeding, and now, a home-stuck elderly person who clicked on bad email and has to use the computer to pay their bills on time or to manage their medication from a mail pharmacy now has the internet turned off and is unable to get it back because that's marked against them.
My view was always about the pirate site. It's just my mind kind of goes to the prohibition.
Yeah.
You banned alcohol. What do you mean alcohol is going to get? So let's have it illegally.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was in bad actors' hands.
Yeah.
It was until you kind of made it more widespread and legalized it that you did have people going to, this curvy guy with the mustache and a Tommy gun.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not the greatest mirror, obviously, but the idea of we don't have physical media anymore in some way.
Yeah.
For a lot of stuff, as you said before. We need a way to preserve this stuff, able to easily access it to some way, you know? And if you did that, a lot of people are not pirates.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know? Hell, you and I talked about this before. I wanted to watch Captain Unicorn. Dubbed, right?
Yeah.
Can't find it anywhere now. If I want to watch Captain Unicorn, the only way to do it if I go to the Black Pirate site.
Yeah.
Besides that, like if I could, I'd like buy it off iTunes or Amazon or something. Like Prime, totally 100%. I to say, okay, buy if there's a physical version, buy it and ship it.
Yeah.
All right, if it's overseas, it may never arrive. I think for my 18th birthday, I bought Spice and Wolf as a birthday gift. I'm still waiting for that thing to arrive.
Jeez.
Yeah. So yeah. I think it got lots of shipping or something, but that can be a risk too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, right, you want to go fully digital? Fine. But then you have to make that stuff still accessible somehow.
Right. Because then it's you get to a point where Ubisoft says that you no longer own the games that you've purchased because it's all cloud sci-fi. I mean, at least Steam has been decent saying that as long as they have the ability to, they'll honor any purchase made.
Yeah. It's best up to line what delisted from Steam, but because they have it, they would ripped it from my account.
Mm-hmm.
I just always don't install it on my rig.
Right.
And then I can access my account on Steam. Spec Ops The Line is there.
Yeah.
On any computer I have, you know? And Steam is good with that.
Yeah. But you never know, because any other company could be as greedy as Ubisoft or Sony and Universal are both also very terrible companies when it comes to best practices for distribution to consumers. But to your point about prohibition, because piracy will still exist in some way because media exists, and I forgot who, I think it's the creator of Hollow Knight, and some indie dev who said that culture should not exist only for people who can afford it, and so he's okay with people pirating this game. And I think that's kind of a good sentiment to have around art in general. But you support what you can if you can, but you shouldn't be deprived from culture because you live in a society that does not value your ability to participate in it. So piracy is always going to exist in some way. It's just going to go to if it gets kicked off the main internet, it's going to go to the dark web, and the only way to pirate is going to be by using VPNs and unmonitored connections and these nodes that don't have any sort of oversight at all. So,
which is much more dangerous.
Yeah, you're going to get every computer is going to get viruses. You're going to have
it's a simple thing of you want people not to pirate your stuff, right?
Yeah.
You have to make it available.
Mm-hmm.
In some form. Now look, you do not have to say, okay, if you go to Disney Plus, you go to Disney Plus in every damn country.
Yeah.
All right, I get they're different deals, right?
Mm-hmm.
But especially major countries, and I'm not trying to single out smaller countries, obviously, because that's unfair. But there's no reason that someone from the US can't be in Canada at all, or England, or Italy, or wherever,
Yeah.
Young Justice I loved as a kid. You can't watch those last few seasons in Canada at all.
Mm.
You can't buy it, you can't stream it, it's nowhere. It's really weird.
Yeah.
But, it's not as simple as I'm phrasing it, obviously. There's a lot of deals and license rights and et cetera, et cetera. Like you said, sometimes they don't even know who the heck owns what anymore.
Yeah.
So how do you handle it then? But
yeah. I mean, there should be some sort of preservation authority because you have like the video game museum that does its best to preserve stuff, but even they run into issues within people coming back saying, like, "Well, no, you can't hold this on. You can't have this game on display because I own it." And like, well, what do you mean you haven't done anything with it in 20 years? It like legally it should be.
Now there has to be
a piece of like essentially it is a part of like art and history. It should be on display.
A part of it is also greed or ego.
Yeah.
You know, I saw some of a current last legal dispute with owners of the Superman IP, right? Try to bar the new Superman from being shown in Canada.
All right.
Because of something about their rights. They don't have the right to actually sue into different countries. That right had expired. So, something like that. And
interesting. Okay.
the Superman orders this state that they just trying to prevent it being sold in other parts.
Right.
I'm like, all right, even if you're right about this legally, really? Well, what is the point of this?
Yeah.
I guess it that you don't want people to make money off of your IP anymore that they don't deserve, but
yeah.
A lot of this also feels like ego or greed sometimes.
For sure. Like I mean, the studio labels have already been like notorious for trying to squeeze as much money out of artists as they can. So that's why a lot of major artists now are promoting being fully independent, or I mean, like Kesha, where she literally had to like fight a legal battle to like get away from her producer and her label for multiple different reasons. But one of them was because they were just taking advantage of her, and so now they're going to do that to the consumer as well.
But also, like you said about the game company, about old games being made, right? They can't. Would that the artist or would that the creator go in to say you can't have this at the museum?
Right, and for that case, it'd be the whoever was the rights holder. So for like, use Taylor Swift as an example. She had to fight legal battle to get her stuff from Warner, I believe, it was either Warner or Universal. And so like she didn't have rights to her own music, and so she essentially did this whole thing where she did a legal battle just for the right to re-release her music without their involvement. And so like at this whole point where now these legal bodies are also the ones that are preventing artists from being able to capitalize on having their music produced as well. So, yeah.
Because artists should ideally have the rights to their damn creations.
You
make a profit off their creations, right?
Yeah.
But I also think that to play devil's advocate an argument, down to Superman film, for example, if it actually try to be barred from other countries, look, they already made a movie, right?
Yeah.
You do not fight that battle. You fight that battle before the thing is made.
Yeah.
The project is made. Once the project is made, you have to find a solution where, okay, we're not going to bar it from half the world. Ideally.
Yeah.
Like, and it's one reason even people are upset about even streaming services. I'd go off on more of a tangent, but another reason people pirate is it's just things are too split up, things are all over the place.
Yeah.
We're back now to cable TV in a way.
Yeah, like the amount of prices, like the amount of bundles you have to get, or the amount of like things you have to pay for unless you are cycling like one streaming service a month or splitting the cost with like roommates or whatever, it is that you're paying the same cost as you would to have a cable provider now.
And I don't know. I'm not familiar with much with cable packages, but you were still where you are now. Streaming sites, at least, again, because of where you are, you may not get actually everything they have.
Mm-hmm.
And a frustrating part is something like Disney, where they own the rights to all their stuff.
Yeah.
I like if it's Netflix, if it's Amazon, I like you're you're renting that IP, right? For an X period of time to have on your platform. That's different. But like, okay, we own it, but we're not going to show it in this country for no reason besides just we won't. That I can think of. That's really odd.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm off my tangent to my rant.
All right, we got 2 more stories.
Yeah. Anything you want to say about this, Esther?
I think we kind of hit on everything.
We kind of went all over the place with that. All
right, here's the fun one.
Yeah.
From Ashley Bellinger at Ars Technica, new federal employees must praise Trump executive orders, submit to continuous vetting.
What?
And this explains the thumbnail.
Let me see that picture again now. New federal must praise Trump.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez, don't know.
Yeah.
This feels illegal.
Yeah, it feels very 1930s Germany.
Yeah, that's another way to phrase it.
Yeah.
It's just terrifying.
Or Pol Pot in Cambodia, yeah. With the federal hiring freeze lifting in mid-July, the Trump administration has rolled out a controversial federal hiring plan that critics warn will politicize and likely slow down the process rather than increase government efficiency. De-emphasizing degree requirements and banning DEI initiatives, as well as many census tracking of gender, race, ethnicity, or religion to assess the composition of government, the plan requires every new hire to submit essays explaining which executive orders or policy initiatives they will help advance. These essays must be limited to 200 words and cannot be generated by a chatbot, the guidance noted. While some applicants may point to policies enacted by prior presidents under their guidance, the president appears to be seeking to ensure that only Trump supporters are hired and that anyone who becomes disillusioned with Trump is weeded out over time. In addition to asking for a show of loyalty during the interview process, all federal workers will also be continuously vetted and must agree to submit to checks for post-appointment conduct that may impact their continued trustworthiness. The guidance noted, referencing required patriotism repeatedly. Required patriotism. According to the Office of Personnel Management, the official plan is to hire only workers dedicated to serving the American people effectively and faithfully. It also requires essays on applicants' commitment to upholding the Constitution, furthering government efficiency and maintaining a strong work ethic.
Okay there, by the way.
I am dying. Although the elimination of DEI initiatives is clearly a core Trump objective, the plan is a hodgepodge of bipartisan reforms developed under both Trump and former President Biden to accelerate and improve the hiring process, alongside plans to eradicate long-standing efforts to make federal workforce more reflective of the American populace. The government news site Government Executive reported. The administration says that the plan will drastically speed up hiring while cutting costs. The plan said the efficiencies will be created by cutting down resumes to a maximum of 2 pages, while creating a pool of resumes that can be returned to so that new jobs won't even need to be announced. Even hiring for jobs requiring top secret clearances will be expedited, the plan said. I doubt we need to get into the critiques beyond what we were already aware of.
Yes, I think we got information now. This is bad.
So you must now be part of the Trump youth, and the process for getting hired to the federal government is now the same as taking a college entrance exam. It's easier than a college entrance exam, actually, because it's only 2 pages and essays are on 200 words. My entrance exam was 1,000 words when I went to college. And I had to submit a cover sheet and portfolio.
This is terrifying and very alarming.
Look, all I'm saying is that if you got a couch, I'm coming over.
Oh yeah, please do.
Yeah. I've reached the story in the show where I have collapsed into my chair and cannot move for the sheer weight
It's
of
hilarious.
stupidity holding me down. Yeah.
It's hilarious and so ridiculously stupid, but honestly true. Highly terrifying.
It feels like something out of like, was it Gene Wilder? It feels like something out of a Gene Wilder movie. Like this is something from Spaceballs.
Yeah, yeah. All the assholes. All the assholes in the White House.
Yeah.
God. Anyway, but no, it is like expert historian church saying it reminds them of 1930s Germany a bit, and we're like the U.S. is going down that path.
I mean, I hate because like you never want to like catastrophize, right? But
of course, obviously,
when you get to the point where you have mandated propaganda, you're rounding up minorities, putting them on buses and planes, and shipping them to concentration camps outside the country, and you are actively like legally persecuting your political rivals,
purging administration,
like it's all the same stuff. Like this is all the same stuff that happened after the party took the Reichstag. Like,
the thing that scares me the most, right, is that this is not Trump.
Yeah,
I do not think this is really because of Trump. Like, I think this is real.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's how things are these days, so it's hard to know, right? But I saw something of an interview from Wednesday, right? How Trump said, how the pharmacies, right, the pharmaceuticals, we will have to punish them if they don't behave. Like, I am rewriting sort of words because I don't remember word for word, right?
Yeah.
But the short story was like, they don't do what we want. We'll punish them by preventing them from selling their cars and their wine. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
When I go to the pharmacy to get meds, I don't think I can say like, hey, doc, can I also have a wine? Or maybe some whiskey.
That was, old school medicine. Yeah, you got ghosts in your blood. Have this whiskey.
I also buy a Porsche.
Yeah.
Like, it's non-coherent babble. It's nonsense.
Yeah.
And I actually started thinking maybe he's kind of losing it a bit, maybe.
I feel like he's been losing it, but he's just so... My mind is I think this is him because he is losing it. That he is... Because this does not seem like a sane person's idea. This seems like someone who is devolving into a form of egomaniacal dementia.
No, that is possible. But I also feel like let's see he died. Hypothetically, right? He's old. It's not to do with violence to him, obviously. Don't do that.
He only ever eats Big Macs. He has to have a coronary at some point.
But he's old and he's not the most healthy. Doesn't matter if his doctor says he's the healthiest person, says Jesus. I don't care.
He for sure has skin cancer from that spray tan.
Yeah. So he's not healthy. So eventually he will die like every other human being in the world sadly does. But I really don't think that will stop. I think we're on a train on a path here.
Yeah.
There's been a project 2025 and all other loyalists and all other people and the think tanks. And it's not going to stop.
Yeah.
It's really not.
It's him. It's Rupert Murdoch. Was it the Koch brothers that are the other media moguls?
Yeah.
And I think what we're in is that we're in. There's there's a bunch of stuff that went around. I saw a couple months ago talking about how this is potentially what's known as an extinction burst, where when a pack of, like when a breed of animals is at the point where they are recognizing that they have like very limited numbers and that they're at the point of dying off, they'll become hyper aggressive and they'll begin just trying to find any other space where they can feed and mate to try and keep themselves alive. And Trump, Murdoch, the Koch brothers, they're all very old at this point, at the point of dying off, and you also see that conservative mindset has been waning in popularity for the past since the 80s. And I think they're trying to do their most to be aggressive to try and bring in as many young people into the fold, people like J.D. Vance, who for the longest time was an ever-Trumper, by whatever means possible. And once they die off, then they're going to have the thing where the youth they've brought in are leaderless and are going to be violent for a time until eventually they end up finding new idols to follow that are not part of that same now extinct group.
Fair. And look, if you have a fair, proper election and everything in a couple of years, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can't see this administration getting their term. Or even not this administration, that see, as long as we don't have a third term for president now, that should not be legally allowed.
Yeah.
But also, imagine you will live for their 8 years is.
Yeah.
No, I'd be very shocked if he went to 90.
Yeah. I mean, he's already lost the support of the people who voted for him on the economy because the economy has gone to absolute shit since his policies have started taking effect. So, like, there's going to be, like, I have to imagine that unless something drastic happens, there's going to be extreme whiplash at midterms and then again during the presidential race.
Like, his approvals has, I think, fallen again.
Yeah.
Right? The last couple of days.
Yeah.
Like, it is atrociously bad.
Yeah.
I think, from what I've heard. So.
Yeah, I don't think he's the most disliked president in American history, but I believe he was rated as one of the, after his first term, one of the worst presidents in American history in terms of what his stuff actually achieved.
Point is, as long as you have a normal election in the next couple of years, right? I find it very hard to believe that this party still keeps power.
Yeah.
I could honestly see, like, after all the chaos and the pain and people actually living through this for 4 years, I see that's how it's affected them, that the country turns blue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My mind is there too.
As long as no funny business happens, which. Yeah.
Okay, last story before we call it for the night. And this is a good one. This is from sort of Rudra at FOSS News. The World Bank just open sourced a powerful metadata tool. This is a quick one. Known for providing loans, grants, and advisory services for developing countries, the World Bank is an influential international financial institution that focuses on reducing poverty, improving infrastructure, and promoting sustainable economic growth. To achieve said goals, the World Bank works closely with governments, civil society, and the private sector to strategize, design, and fund development projects across diverse fields. Our recent announcement sees them venture into open source space with Metadata Editor, an internal tool of theirs. As a web-based tool, Metadata Editor helps users create and manage metadata, the detailed information that describes datasets. Using it ensures that data is well documented, making it easier for anyone to understand, share, and reuse. Open sourced under the MIT license, Metadata Editor was originally created to help World Bank teams manage statistical metadata in line with their developmental data quality policy. Soon after, they realized that the tool had much more potential beyond their use cases, as others showed interest in adopting and adapting it for their own data documentation needs. Two organizations, Paris 21 and INEGI, have already joined with the National Institute of Statistics and Geography. Okay. That's the one I didn't know. I've already joined up with World Bank to collaborate on improving and expanding the metadata editor and helping adapt the tool for wider use. Currently, it supports metadata standards like those there, Nerd Talk. The release is underpinned by a new institutional licensing framework that enables the World Bank to share their software developed through public funding while maintaining its unique legal protections. During the announcement, World Bank stated, until now, the bank's ability to release software was limited by legal and procedural complexity. Each release required custom legal terms and ad hoc reviews. The new licensing framework replaces that model with a clear, repeatable structure, enabling more teams to share tools openly, efficiently, and at scale. To ensure implementation is consistent and sustainable, the bank's open source programs office provides support for internal teams releasing software. So essentially, what the way it comes down is that the World Bank is already a pretty philanthropic organization. They help the developing world essentially become financially stable, which has been a consistent struggle since the end of colonialism, essentially. And it's still something that it requires a multifaceted approach due to bad actors and neocolonialism done through major corporations. But what they have done is that one of the most powerful tools that they have, their ability to categorize, label, and create databases, essentially. They've now released that for free for and any one of these developing nations, or anyone who wants to, but importantly, anyone who's working on improving the quality of life in a developing nation can now use this to help improve their own internal financial planning.
Dude, is your mic okay?
Is it coming through weird?
Kind of, but yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I think
some hissing sound. It felt like you got a louder.
What if he's using the wrong mic, but I was messing with my shirt?
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, it's probably picking up my shirt.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Well, I have nothing else to really say on this. I have nothing to say on this, really.
Sure. I just thought it was kind of a. We had so much. We had some very interesting and a very heavy story, so I felt like this is kind of a good, like, little. It's kind of a feel good piece because it's cool to see, like an organization doing what is like very clearly a move to actually help benefit other people in the digital space.
Like, that is cool.
Yeah.
That is cool. That does not seem like a negative thing, I think of.
Yeah.
No.
And like, especially like for tools like developing hard developing financial infrastructure, having a proper like database management software suite like this, even if it's just the editor, not like the rest of the suite, like, but this can be easily plugged into like any other suite. This can like improve their ability to manage like financial records and like as well as asset management by an insane amount, because records keeping is one of the most important, if not the most important part of large scale finances, large scale economics.
Right.
Yeah. So
yeah, I was about to say, like, it sounds like pretty cool.
I'm excited to see what more comes out of that. But also, if you want to use it yourself, you can. I'm not sure what use case a single person would have, but if you're, want to try it out, get a license, I guess. Okay, well, this has been Free Beer Society for today, June 2nd, 2025. We'll try to be live again on Sunday as long as schedules allow and nothing's. Yeah. Any notes before we sign off?
Not really. They did very interesting stories this week.
Yeah.
Some of my favorites, actually.
I think it's a good couple topics as well, and hopefully, yeah.
Hopefully think I'm fine for next week. I think the week after, right?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, a week after may be a little rough because Father's Day.
Oh, yeah.
But
That's right.
matters when holiday goes.
Yeah.
Besides that, so first week of July I'll be gone, but that's it.
Yeah.
But or roughly first weekend of July. But no, I'm things will keep on moving.
Yep.
I'm like seeing that the administration is getting pushed back on what's going on.
Me too. Yeah.
It feels like you're getting some decent level pushback in some regards.
Yeah, I hope it continues, but yeah.
I hope.
Sorry. I feel like it's gonna be one of those things that, like, if we can get to a decent midterm where we can, like, have a solid opposition party majority in both the House and the Senate, then hopefully we can just turn the rest of the the rest of the term into a lame duck presidency. But yeah,
maybe I do. But no, but that's it.
Okay.
Nothing else to say.
All right. Later, chat.
Later.